Chapter 26. The reason why they were able to locate Broly and sneak in to install surveillance cameras and bugs was because the products manufactured by the mutant factory had signal transmitters installed in their bodies. They found the safe house based on the signal emitted by the signal transmitter. Don't worry about this, Bolton. We install signal transmitters just to provide better after-sales service. For example, if the product suddenly regains part of its memory or loses control, we can recover it in time. Trust us, our after-sales service just perfect. Francis said very perfunctorily, his attention already fully focused on Broly. If he achieves a breakthrough result through this material, then he can leave Mexico, a place like this, and never deal with these stinking drug traffickers again. Bolton laughed angrily. I thought we paid enough to have full ownership of these mutants. He was about to say something more when his neck was suddenly pinched by Francis, and his whole body was lifted into the air. He struggled feebly, his face flushed red because of difficulty breathing. We will appreciate your patience, Mr. Burton. After all, our after-sales service is not cheap. The reason why Francis was asked to run the mutant factory was because there was a large amount of experimental materials readily available in Mexico. The second is to extract a large amount of cash flow from these wealthy drug dealers to support the experiment. Given the opportunity to leave, he was so excited that he finally stopped being conceited to Bolton. Go ahead, this is perfect material, he said, throwing Bolton in his hand to the ground. Bolton, who was almost suffocating, gasped greedily for new air. A group of 12 heavily armed soldiers followed Francis and Dust Angel and got into 3 cars. Bolton hesitated for a moment, quietly pressed the phone in his pocket, chose an Edelweiss and got in. The convoy roared out of the underground garage and headed towards the safe house. The department store near the safe house has a high enough floor and is the commanding height of the entire street nearby, giving it an excellent view. Wade sat on a recliner, flipping through a Playboy in boredom. Alejandro held a pair of binoculars and watched what was going on in the street. He received professional training from the CIA and discovered the cameras and bugs in the safe house immediately. Isabella Reyes was moved to another safe place, but Alejandro was not sure whether the person who installed the camera was the Mata group, the Reyes group or the CIA, so he chose one that only he knew secret location. Broly volunteers to stay as bait, trying to figure out who the watcher is. Otherwise, if someone is always staring at you from behind, your actions will feel like a thorn in your back, and you need to always be wary of the knife stabbing you from behind. A convoy has appeared. It's very suspicious. Get up quickly. Deep in Area C, there are 3 black SUVs approaching from far away. Alejandro was suddenly on guard. Wade threw away the Playboy in his hand, picked up the 40A3 sniper rifle, and placed it on the parapet of the roof of the department store. The two had competed in shooting skills. Although Alejandro was very reluctant to admit it, Wade's sniping skills really surpassed him. So Alejandro will be the observer and Wade will be the sniper. Wade looked through the scope at the convoy coming from the street. Ha, Keter, you don't look like a good person at first glance. Full-size SUVs such as the Cotter are generally used by villains in movies. Be vigilant. Alejandro looked at the range card and said to Wade. Sniping is a comprehensive technology that needs to consider factors such as distance, bullet type, wind speed, wind direction, temperature, atmospheric pressure, target type, etc. Even the sniper's blood pressure and heartbeat can affect whether the bullet can hit the target. The range card is a way of recording various factors and applying them. It has been used since World War II. Modern sniper teams have a pre-printed standard icon, which is divided into a drawing area, a target information area and an auxiliary explanation area. The drawing area is a 180 degrees semicircle, with different distances marked at equidistant intervals and divided into sectors by dotted lines. Contour lines are then used to draw the landform features and conspicuous features in the sniper area, which are numbered. The target information area records the basic information of reference target points such as ground objects, such as position, distance, pitch angle, and positioning description. The auxiliary explanation area mainly records basic information of auxiliary design, such as observation location, north direction, correction amount when shooting at different distances, wind direction, wind speed, temperature, humidity, and air pressure. Chapter 27. Did you notice the woman in the passenger seat of the second SUV? Alejandro said with a somewhat solemn tone. Wow, with this figure, I feel like she can snap my neck with one arm. Wade kept mumbling, without moving his hands and feet, he put Sand Angel into the scope, go and shoot a gun. Alejandro said with some self-blame, "Wait a minute, I recognize this person. Bullets may not necessarily work on her. It seems that the people who are targeting us are people from the mutant factory. Damn it, the mutant we captured must have a signal transmitter on him. I was careless." He knew about Francis from the mutant factory. This man was so mysterious that even the CIA's database did not have his information. This man not only runs a factory, but also has an underground boxing market mainly for mutant boxers to fight, and has considerable power in Mexico. Matt tried to mobilize CIA resources to investigate Francis' information, but was stopped soon after. "Let's wait. Since this woman is here, Francis should be here too. There may be a large number of mutants in the convoy. Our first action will not serve any purpose other than to alert the snakes and make them more vigilant." Alejandro was very calm. He knew that their main fighting strength was Broly. "Our mission is mainly to observe the battlefield and provide Broly with battlefield information." 3 cotters parked at the door of the safe house. After the doors opened, heavily armed soldiers filed out. Francis glanced at the surveillance video on the camera and saw that the target was still punching as usual. The target hasn't noticed anything unusual yet. "Wear gas masks." The third group surrounds the building and the others rush in. They have extensive experience in how to capture mutants. Some mutants are so strong that the anesthesia needle fired from the anesthesia gun cannot penetrate their tough skin. So they use anesthetic smoke canisters. The dose of this powerful anesthetic specifically for mutants is enough to anesthetize more than 2,000 people in one smoking can. Even for an elephant, it only takes 3 seconds from inhalation to passing out. After saying that, the first group, the second group and the fourth group instantly blew open the door of the safe house and rushed in. "Broly! Be careful! They are going to use poison gas. Strike first and move the battlefield to the streets. The wind will disperse the poison gas." After Alejandro noticed that the soldiers started wearing gas masks, he immediately picked up the walkie-talkie and alerted Broly. "Aim at the guy holding the day, he is Francis." He glanced at the wind meter and reported the data. The distance is 352 meters, the wind direction is 3/4 to the right, and it is corrected to the left by 2 points. Wait for the cloth shoot after Raleigh takes action. Wade put Francis into the scope and began to regulate his breathing. "Leave it to me and I'll smash his head." The soldiers who broke into the safe house were advancing vigilantly and quickly. The first person pulled the latch of the smoke can, and the can with green smoke rolled deep along the corridor. There were no lights on in the corridor, and the curtains were drawn. It was dark, making it difficult to see what was going on inside. The air was a little quiet, and I could only hear my own heartbeat, chaotic footsteps, and the sound of the rolling smoke can. "Target! Where are their goals?" The next moment, they heard the howling of the wind. Lang Fang Wind Fist. The fists swung at high speed moved the air, making a sound like howling wolves. Before those soldiers could see the enemy, they were hit by fists and claws and torn apart. One of the soldiers' pupils shrank, and dense diamond-shaped scales immediately proliferated under his skin, breaking his combat uniform. This was his super ability that he was proud of. The next moment, a palm penetrated his chest directly, destroying the internal organs in the cavity, and then pulled it out instantly. The person hit by the fist was shot to death without even a chance to scream. In the dim corridor, only the sound of flesh and blood being torn apart by fists could be heard. The anesthetic they regarded as their trump card was blown far away by the wind of the fist, and could not get close to Broly's body. Francis almost crushed the da in his hand, and Broly disappeared in the blink of an eye from the surveillance screen. "What's going on inside?" reported quickly. The only response he received was the rustle of signal interruption. This situation that was out of control made him extremely anxious. "Take out the heavy weapons directly. As long as the target appears, don't use any hesitation and just fire." Just in case, Francis also brought 2 Stark Industries Falcon anti-tank missiles. This advanced anti-tank missile has an infrared tracking seeker and a tandem armor-piercing warhead, but only has an ordinary disposable rocket launcher file size. It is a flagship product of Stark Industries. Chapter 28. Because the resolution and sensitivity of the infrared imaging seeker are extremely high, the Falcon anti-tank missile can easily distinguish the infrared radiation of the human body from environmental radiation, track it accurately, and hit the target. It has also been used to deal with mutant. Francis was about to say something when he was suddenly startled and his body leaned forward violently. The next moment, a bloody flower exploded on his shoulder. The bullet penetrated the body, leaving a hideous wound the size of a fist file. "There are snipers." He immediately rolled behind the car with great vigilance. Alejandro immediately told Wade to switch targets. Bang! A soldier who was about to take an anti-tank missile from his car had his head exploded. Wade quickly switched targets and beat another soldier's head into a rotten watermelon. Maha fake! No matter how slow Francis reacted, he knew they were ambushed. But he did not despair. Sand Angel was his biggest trump card. Although that mutant is also very strong, facing Sand Angel should not have the advantage of crushing the level, and there is still a possibility of escaping unscathed. Boom! The next moment, a figure crashed through the outer wall of the safe house, and then hit the body of a cotter. The remaining force did not dissipate, and pushed the cotter 2 or 3 meters later before stopping the impact. Potential. Stardust Angel pulled his body out of the shape-shifting body in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Before she could stand up, a figure followed closely behind her and rushed in front of her. His strong body is like a sculpture, full of the beauty of power. First, push the soles of the feet on the ground, use the force to pass through the calves, turn the waist and hips, turn the shoulders, and punch. A dynamic chain is used to deliver a straight punch. Triceps suri, quadriceps femoris, thigh adductors, internal obliques, external obliques, contralateral erector spinae, middle and anterior deltoid, triceps brachii, pronator teres are here. Remember that all the straight punches contributed their own strength. Bang! The explosion was like thunder on the ground, and the Sand and Dust Angel's body directly penetrated the car body, splashed several times on the road, and then slammed into the wall. Broly stood staring at his victory, then suddenly tilted his head and looked at Francis. "Are you just trying to catch me?" Francis swallowed hard. During an experiment, his nerve endings were burned and he couldn't feel any pain. Even so, he could still feel the terrifying momentum, which made people unable to muster the courage to resist. With a roar, the Dust Angel pulled up the roadside pillar and threw it towards Broly. Broly punched the stone pier and turned it into stone dust, then he dodged and rushed in front of Sand Angel. He made a fist with his right arm and slashed towards his head. At the moment, the ultimate force he unleashed with one arm exceeded 4 tons. Adding the destructive power of Chi, if he hit him, he would definitely die. Sand and Dust Angel's heart skipped a beat. The fist on the side of her body passed over her head, and the sharp airflow left a scratch on her face. A drop of blood slid down his cheek, and was blown into a mist of blood by the fierce wind of the fist. This is the first time for Sand Angel to encounter such a terrifying opponent. That powerful aura makes people feel that they are not facing a human being, but some kind of brutal beast in human skin. The disguise will be torn apart at any time, revealing the creepy prototype. Just standing in front of him requires great courage. But S.H.I.E.L.D. Angel has not given up hope. The fighting skills she is good at are suitable for defeating the strong by the weak, so there may not be no chance of victory. The next moment, she felt a pain in her abdomen, and the rough fist force almost squeezed all the internal organs out of her mouth. Her vision went black, and her brain was unable to make any judgment, and she fell directly to the ground. In a daze, her hair was suddenly grabbed, and Broly lifted her whole body into the air. "You only have this little ability, and you can't compare to Chap," Broly said a little disappointed. In his opinion, Stardust Angel is only as strong as Chappu, and at least Chappu is much more durable than her. He didn't use the power of Chi, but just relied on his fists to beat S.H.I.E.L.D. Angel till his orifices bled. Ah! Sand Angel held Broly's hand with both hands, exerted force suddenly, and tore off all the hair that was caught. Then he grabbed it with both hands, and exerted force on the muscles of his waist, abdomen, and back, pulling Broly's body apart. It was swung into the air and then slammed to the ground. Boom! The ground shook violently, and the hard concrete pavement was cracked by the powerful fall. Sand Angel's attack was far from over. She grabbed Broly's body and threw him 3 times, almost smashing the entire road into concrete pieces. "How about it? BD!" She grinned ferociously and let out a beast-like roar. The muscles in her arms bulged violently, almost breaking the highly elastic battlesuit. The powerful force burst out and directly threw Broly dozens of meters into the air. It fell down under the influence of gravity and fell straight to the ground. Chapter 29. Sand Angel rushed towards the direction where Broly fell, jumped up high, and then hit Broly on the chest with his elbow. Boom! The ground shook violently under this heavy elbow, and dust flew into the air. On the roof of the department store, Wade and Alejandro looked at the scene in front of them with their mouths agape. Is this woman a monster transformed from an elephant? He started to pack up his firearms and prepared to run away, but Alejandro grabbed him. Broly will be fine. Alejandro has seen the terrifying destructive power of Broly in his angry form, and knows that he is far from using his true strength, let alone being defeated so easily. Stardust Angel panted violently. The set of consecutive falls just now was not easy. She is proficient in Jiu-Jitsu, especially Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is good at defeating the strong with the weak and overcoming the hard with softness. She also went to Japan to learn orthodox Jiu-Jitsu techniques. In Mutants Fight, due to the qualitative change in strength, techniques such as triangle locks that rely on body weight to suppress opponents are no longer effective, but lock techniques such as drop chokes, crossbars, and guillotines to subdue opponents are still powerful. But Saiyan Angel's truly decisive martial arts skill is the secret throwing skill learned from Japan. This is a technique of grabbing the enemy and then beating it. Just like a blacksmith striking iron, the earth is the best anvil. After being suspended in the air, a person cannot use the power release technique to relieve the enemy's strength. He can only rely on his body to bear all the damage. Death. Arrogant fool. Sand Angel laughed crazily, releasing the overwhelming pressure Broly put on her. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed her shoulder and lifted her up. Interesting tricks I learned. Kick. Sand Angel's teeth trembled violently because of fear. The attack just now was the most powerful damage she could do. But the enemy didn't feel any pain or itching. This caused her to completely lose her fighting spirit, and for the first time in her life, she fell into such despairing fear. This fear made her shed tears uncontrollably. Suddenly, the hand holding her shoulder loosened, and Angel fell to the ground without any strength. You are a guy worthy of the name of a warrior. You are the first person to hurt me. I will let you go and don't help others in the future. Broly hesitated for a moment, ready to let her go. Because she is the first person in Broly who can be called a martial artist so far. Coupled with her not weak super ability and physical fitness, maybe there is still room for development in strength. He felt the pain in his body and walked towards Francis. Please. Sand Angel also wanted to beg Broly to let Francis go, but he was stunned by his look. Walking in front of Francis, Broly suddenly grabbed his shoulders and slammed him. His movements were almost exactly the same as those of Dust Angel just now. Pudgy. Before Francis could say anything to beg for mercy, he was thrown into an indescribable heap. Although this throwing skill is much simpler than the Wolf Fang Wind Fist and Satan fighting skills, it is still practical and may have miraculous effects when facing certain large enemies. Broly. Get out of there! The Mexican army is coming. Alejandro's voice suddenly sounded in the earbuds. Broly knocked on his earbuds and indicated that he already knew. He was not ready to deal with the Mexican government yet. Once things got to that level, it would be very troublesome. He glanced at Angel, who was in a daze because of Francis' death, and wanted to get her to leave this place of right and wrong. Hey! Before she finished speaking, a grenade suddenly hit Sand Angel. The violent explosion pushed her to the ground, followed closely by the second and third rounds. The Mexican army is divided into 9 brigades and a large number of independent regiments and battalions. The headquarters of the 9 brigades are all located in Mexico City. They are the only mobile force of the Mexican army and are under the direct command of the federal government. There are 1 armored brigade, 2 infantry brigades, 1 motorized infantry brigade, 1 airborne brigade, 3 military police brigades and 1 presidential guard brigade. Although it is said to have an armored brigade, Mexico does not have tanks in active service. The French AX-13 light tanks originally imported from Belgium were products of the 1940s and 1950s. They have long been worn out and have all been retired. Even the armored vehicles in active service are old and have weak firepower. The AX-VC infantry fighting vehicle, a product of the 1960s, has weak armor and low firepower. The Mexican army has partially modified it and installed a V8 diesel engine from the American Dyna Cummins company. The original manual small firepower has also been removed. The turret was modified into a HK-19 grenade launcher and a 762 machine gun. Chapter 30. In Mexico, drug lords are so rampant, and part of the reason is the weak military strength. Major Jackson Nez was sitting in an AX-VCI command vehicle, with a cigarette in his mouth and smoking slowly and methodically. He took the initiative to apply to perform the mission. Just an hour ago, a mysterious phone call came to the office. The Reyes group was willing to pay $10 million just to make it easier for him to order his men to pull the trigger when commanding them. This is a very pleasant task, isn't it? With just one sentence, you can easily get $10 million. You know, he secretly passed on so much information about anti-drug operations before, but only received 600,000 yuan. With this 10 million, he does not need to continue serving, but only for the lifetime retirement pension that he can receive after serving for 20 years and retiring. After 20 years of hard work, you can only get a monthly salary of 60 yuan as retirement pay. Whoever wants to do it can do it. Soon, the female mutant was shot dead. The super abilities of these mutants look fancy, but they are really vulnerable to the power of modern weapons. The people at the mutant factory offended Filippo, who wanted them dead. He took out his cell phone and looked at it. There was a guy named Francis on Filippo's must-kill list. The nearby traffic has been blocked, and Francis is already a turtle in the urn. They can just ask the soldiers to get out of the car and search later. It is said that the mutant factory has something to do with the US military. Unfortunately, I cannot immigrate to the United States after retiring, but Europe is also a good choice. So what about mutant? He's not a corpse now. He should have thought of this outcome when he offended the Reyes group. Bolton had quietly left the convoy a long time ago. He looked at the fragmented bodies of Francis and Sand Angel with a smile of victory on his face. The humiliation of being picked up like a chicken by Francis was now finally washed away. He picked up the phone and said to Major Jackson Nez, "Mr. Nez, don't let go of the remaining mutant, he is the one who kidnapped Isabella. After killing him, search for Isabella's location. As long as he finds her, Mr. Filippo is willing to pay another $500,000. He was about to put away his mobile phone and leave this place of right and wrong, when the hand holding the mobile phone was suddenly pinched by a palm of huge amounts. Bolton's physique is already considered tall among ordinary people, but compared with that palm, his hands are as small as those of a child. When he turned around, he found the mutant standing behind him. It's just that his size has grown dramatically, exceeding 2 meters, and his steel-like muscles have burst his shirt. Standing in front of him, he looks like a giant from myths and legends. Broly grabbed the phone and dug out the chat history. "You gutter rats." Sand Angel's murder was not the reason why he was so angry. She followed Francis to help others and died unjustly. He was angry at a warrior who, instead of being killed in a fair fight, was killed by a sneak attack after exhaustion. This anger directly made him enter the angry state. "No, you can't kill me. We're surrounded here. Even if you kill me, you'll be desperate. You'll definitely die. I can help you escape." Broly crushed the phone in his hand, and green energy surged out of his hand, burning like a flame. In the new version of Dragon Ball Super Broly, Broly's energy is white in normal form and turns green after entering angry form. With a flick of his finger, a ray of green light shot out, pierced through Bolton's head, exploded violently, and engulfed him. What a dirty firework! Satan Fighting Skill Level 12, Air Splitting Fist. After hard training, you finally mastered the technique of concentrating the energy and punching it out. The attack has a splash effect. Channel 2 is broadcasting live coverage of the fighting in Mexico City. The powerful Televisa television company directly called 2 helicopters to broadcast the operation live. As the largest commercial television network in the country, Channel 2 is not small in scale. The camera clearly recorded the scene of Sand Angel being shot to death without even a second being edited. Well done! Miguel Reyes is Filippo's younger brother. The two of them stood in the spacious and luxurious living room watching the live broadcast of the TV station. These Yankees think they can be tyrannical here, but they are wrong. When we take over the mutant factory, the mutant group will not be our opponent at all. Filippo was not as optimistic as his brother. The entire America is America's back garden. After the Kikai incident, anyone who attacks US government staff must consider the consequences. Chapter 31. Shishi Camarena, a DEA agent hunting down the Guadalajara cartel in Mexico. He was fruitful in his operations against the Guadalajara cartel, destroying a marijuana plantation in the desert and seizing and destroying marijuana worth as much as $2.5 billion. This completely angered the Guadalajara group. They kidnapped Kikai and tortured him crazily. His body was found on a farm a month after the kidnapping. This incident became a big deal, and the US government launched an all-round attack on the Guadalajara group. The Guadalajara group, which was at its peak, quickly fell apart. If it were not for this incident, neither the Reyes group nor the Mata group would have come forward. Even they were part of the Guadalajara cartel. Don't worry, brother, it's the Mexican army who did it. What does it have to do with us? Miguel said nonchalantly. Philip Pato sighed, picked up the goblet in his hand and drank the wine in one gulp. He knew that compared to Barlow, his biggest shortcoming was that he was prone to looking forward and backward and was not decisive enough. This allowed him to avoid many dangers, but also missed many opportunities. This time he was prepared to be more decisive. Suddenly, his hand holding the wine glass shook, and the expensive crystal wine glass fell directly to the ground, with the bright red wine flowing like blood. On TV, a green light bullet hit an advancing XVCI infantry fighting vehicle at an alarming speed. It easily penetrated the front armor of this classic car and then exploded violently. The infantry fighting vehicle was opened like a can, and the ammunition stored in the vehicle exploded. The ignited bullets were fired in all directions like firework, and thick smoke was burning on the wreckage. The terrorists fired unknown energy and destroyed an army infantry fighting vehicle. The live broadcast screen shook violently and pointed to the sky. It was the flight crew driving the helicopter to make an emergency climb. Although the host was also frightened, he still introduced the situation below in a very professional manner. Broly stood next to the wreckage of the infantry fighting vehicle, the air on his hands burning like fire and smoke. Opposite him, soldiers were facing a powerful enemy. The diesel engine made an overwhelmed roar, driving the old infantry fighting vehicle back, trying to distance itself from the monster. The soldiers were half kneeling on the ground, putting Broly's figure into their sights. Bang bang bang! Everyone set their rifles to full automatic and fired at Broly frantically. Killing the Dust Angel's HK-19 grenade launcher made a dull shooting sound, the propellant burned, and the high-explosive grenade was ejected. Boom! The exploding grenade kicked up a huge cloud of smoke. Unfortunately, Broly's reaction was faster than theirs. His powerful jumping ability allowed him to jump to the outer wall of the street building in an instant. The sporadic bullets were like mosquito bites, unable to hurt him at all. He's not dead. On the wall. Shoot! Shoot! Broly burst out with terrifying strength, jumped directly from the vertical wall, and threw out the two balls of chi in his hands in mid-air. The two condensed air holes penetrated the top armor of the infantry fighting vehicle and penetrated into the interior. Boom! Boom! With the violent explosion, the infantry fighting vehicle was blown to pieces, leaving only two deep pits on the hard road surface, as if it had been shelled. Experience +8, experience +11, experience +7. Satan's fighting skills exerted unprecedented destructive power in Broly's hands. New energy quickly gathered in his hands again, and Broly fell directly to the ground. His strong muscles seemed to be twisted into steel cables, and he punched the front armor of an infantry fighting vehicle that had no time to react. Pure punch strength may only be able to penetrate the armor of an infantry fighting vehicle, but under the action of highly compressed air, the entire tank was blown away by this punch, and the restless air directly lifted the entire tank in mid-air. Torn into a pile of scattered metal fragments. Debris fell like a heavy rain, and the surviving soldiers looked at this scene numbly. Their morale collapsed. This was not a monster they could deal with at all. This is simply a one-sided massacre. Our army has no resistance in front of this terrorist. The host said in a trembling tone, fear inevitably welling up from deep in his heart. Broly's speed reached a certain limit, and the camera could not clearly capture his figure. It could only record a clear figure at the moment when he stopped. Philip Pato sat on the sofa. Although the air conditioner was on, he was still sweating profusely. His lips were pursed into a thin line, and he was extremely pale. His younger brother Miguel was even more miserable. His legs were so weak from fear that he was no longer as high-spirited as before. Chapter 32. Where did this monster come from? His voice was hoarse, and after his originally SY hairstyle was wet with sweat, strands stuck to his head. Philip Pato managed to regain his senses. Pack it up, we need to get out of Mexico City. After provoking such a monster, they can no longer stay in Mexico City and they must leave immediately. The Reyes group is like a tree deeply rooted in the country of Mexico. As long as the two brothers do not die, they will only be severely damaged at most, but not destroyed. Boom! Broly stood on the roof of the last infantry fighting vehicle. The vertical palm pierced the roof of the infantry fighting vehicle, and then opened the top armor like a can. Major Jackson Nez's pale, ghost-like face was revealed, squirming in the narrow space of the infantry fighting vehicle like a mouse caught by a cat. Don't kill me, I surrender. We surrender. He didn't dare meet Broly's eyes. The energy in Broly's hand suddenly lit up, and then he took it out and flew into the infantry fighting vehicle under the desperate eyes of Major Nez. Boom! After the violent explosion, the blazing flames engulfed everything. Broly jumped from the remains of the infantry fighting vehicle as tiny bits of metal shot out in all directions. Not only was his energy not exhausted due to crazy consumption, but new energy was constantly flowing out of his body. After entering the angry form, his combat power has been rapidly expanding. Sanfei Shideo, S.H.I.E.L.D headquarters. The magnificent building is the center of S.H.I.E.L.D, an international organization, and the shiny bald head sitting in the office is the brain of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury at the moment was holding his chin in his hands, staring at the rioting scene on the TV. The extremely destructive figure in the picture inexplicably reminded him of the past more than 10 years ago, when he had only entered S.H.I.E.L.D. for a few years. That woman is the same, able to emit such destructive energy. Suddenly, he pressed the pause button, and Broly's figure was relatively clear on the TV. Maybe it's not a belt. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D, he knows mutant very well. Broly's abilities are too diverse to be considered a mutant. He thought for a moment and dialed a number on the phone. Phil, come into my office. Not long after, an agent with a dangerous hairline appeared in the office. Investigating this person, I want to know his past experience, his identity, his mental state, who his accomplices are, and the causes and consequences of the riot in Mexico. Nick Fury glanced at the blazing fire on the TV screen, the wreckage of the infantry fighting vehicle. Pay attention to your approach and avoid direct conflict with it. No matter how well trained the S.H.I.E.L.D agent is, they will never be a match for this saboteur. Nick Fury pinched his eyebrows with a headache. The Earth was far more dangerous than ordinary people imagined. S.H.I.E.L.D spends a lot of money every year, but is very powerless when facing these monsters. If this attacker showed up in New York, their response would be no better than in Mexico. Neither the police, nor the SWAT, nor even the National Guard, have any experience dealing with this type of situation. This reminded him again of the whimsical plan of his youth. Maybe only monsters can deal with monsters. An anti-tank team set up a firing position on the roof of the restaurant. Their target is the mutant who was wildly beating up the Mexican army on the street. The first company to arrive had already been defeated and completely lost its combat effectiveness. They were the third batch of troops to arrive. The Falcon anti-tank missile is divided into two parts, the sight and the launcher. The power supply module and cooling module on the launch tube are responsible for powering the electronic components of the missile and cooling the infrared seeker head after activation and before launch. The seeker of the Falcon anti-tank missile uses a 320x320 mercury cadmium telluride staring infrared focal plane array imaging. The high resolution of the seeker head is extremely dependent on the low temperature environment, and it will directly lose the ability to lock on the target at normal temperature. Although Stark Industries' technology is very strong, the small cooling module can only work for a maximum of 4 minutes. After activating the missile, it was not launched within 4 minutes. This expensive missile worth a high-level car was directly scrapped. But Broly's movements were too fast, and he often fell out of the scope's field of view instantly, making it impossible to lock on. They have already scrapped 2 sets of expensive missiles for this reason. Calm down, activate the missile the moment he stops and take aim. The leader of the anti-tank team wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Although he said this, who could really stay calm in the face of this monster that could dismantle an infantry fighting vehicle as a toy? Chapter 33. In fact, several other anti-tank groups had already fled, and they were the only ones still holding on to their positions. Boom! A green light bomb exploded directly on 2 infantry fighting vehicles, and shockwave directly overturned the 2 fighting vehicles. Broly jumped onto the chariot, allowing the survivors inside to flee in panic. The anger is rising. The surging chi was almost reaching its limit. Because he has been in the angry state for too long, his reason has been completely swallowed up by the desire to fight. He fights constantly, and will never stop as long as there is an enemy standing in front of him. Chance. The team leader quickly activated the missile and used the locking frame in the sight to lock Broly. The system automatically transmitted target information to the missile. Hurry up, baby! The cooling of the seeker head is not completed instantly. Even for the advanced Falcon anti-tank missile, it takes at least 15 seconds. Drop the beep of a successful lock was like a heavenly sound to the ears of the anti-tank team. Emission. The missile's launch engine worked quickly, ejected the missile body from the launch tube, and quickly stopped working. After the missile flew several meters, the flight engine began to respond, and bright tail flames spurted out, pushing the missile to accelerate rapidly. Under the attack path planned by the missile-borne computer, the missile climbs upward at an elevation angle of 18 degrees. After reaching the commanding heights, the guidance head starts to work. The guidance part uses an algorithm to compare each frame of the image formed by the guidance head with the pre-stored target picture. Through comparison and identification, Broly's position was distinguished from a large number of heat sources. The missile wings swung, constantly correcting the missile's flight attitude and direction, and dived and descended like a meteor. When the swooping missile was suddenly held in Broly's hand. Its designer, Tony Stark, probably didn't consider the possibility of the missile being caught in flight. The fuse was not triggered, the huge amounts of power of the tandem warhead were not detonated, and the silence was despairing. Drink! Broly shouted and threw the missile back like a javelin. The missiles roared away even faster than when they came. Boom! The violent explosion directly destroyed the entire launch site. Alejandro looked at the devastated streets under the crazy destruction. The battle line had already been pushed 3 streets by Broly, and the sound of explosions could only be heard faintly. It turns out that this is Broly's true strength, he sighed in his heart. The cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang. He came to his senses and took it out, looked at the number, and pressed the call button. Alex, where did you find this person? According to our internal intelligence, 1/5 of the mobile forces in the Mexican capital area have been destroyed, and their president is going crazy. Matt's voice came from the other end of the phone. After seeing the live broadcast on the TV station, he immediately thought of Alejandro, and obtained a lot of high-level intelligence in Mexico through CIA channels. Tony Stark is going to make a lot of money. The poor performance of the army this time has finally made the Mexican president and the big shot in the Enada party make up their minds to allocate funds to upgrade weapons and equipment. People from Stark Industries are already preparing quotations. Alejandro unconsciously tapped his thigh with his hand. How are you going to leave Mexico? They have gone crazy. Even if they block the border and dig the ground 3 feet, they will not let you leave. Matt said calmly, just 20 minutes ago, the Mexican government officially requesting assistance from the US government, a mechanized infantry brigade and an attack helicopter battalion of the Dahong 1st Division have begun to assemble. Although your friends are very strong, I am not optimistic about your outcome. Alejandro finally spoke on the phone. You can take him away, but I will not leave Mexico until I have completed my revenge. Wade, who was standing next to him, suddenly became anxious, pinched Alejandro's neck and said, "Friend, don't forget me. I want to leave this hellish place too." Broly made the matter such a big deal, and he, who had always been fearless, became paralyzed. The wreckage of the infantry fighting vehicle almost filled the entire street. The remaining oil in the vehicle burned, sparks shot out, the steel was burned red hot, there were flames everywhere, and thick smoke rose into the sky. The whole of Mexico City was like a witch's boiling cauldron, in chaos. Broly sat on the turret of an infantry fighting vehicle. His original clothes had turned into tattered strips of cloth, barely covering his body. He finally got out of his angry state and regained his sanity, but his head was still in chaos, like a pot of porridge. He lost most of his memories in the angry form. He glanced at the system page and found that he had reached level 9 unknowingly, and he only had more than 50 experience points left before level 10. God knows how many people he killed in the melee just now to gain enough experience. Chapter 34. The Satan fighting skill is already at full level 12, and the Wolf Fang Wind Fist has also been upgraded to level 8 without knowing it. In the angry form, his martial arts ability has also been horribly improved, and the level of Wolf Fang Wind Fist has increased rapidly. Wolf Fang Wind Fist LV4, Fist of the Wind, punching for a long time, giving you unparalleled punching speed, attack speed +5. Wolf Fang Wind Fist LV7, Wolf Fist, a technique that can only be mastered by warriors who are extremely skilled in boxing. It shoots out a wolf-shaped energy to bite the enemy. The sharp wolf teeth will tear apart all the enemies in front of you. In the theatrical version of Dragon Fist Explosion, who would you rather? Wukong once used Dragon Fist to defeat the final boss Hildegon. This theatrical version is quite good, and it also explains how Trunks killed Forley. The origin of the long sword used by King S.A. He looked down at his hands, which were surrounded by a much weaker chi than before. Whoosh! The air bomb roared and bombarded the remains of a relatively complete infantry fighting vehicle. Amid the dull explosion, a large piece of the infantry fighting vehicle's armor was dented. The power of the air-splitting fist under normal conditions has weakened a lot. The next moment, a white wolf made of gas sprang out and instantly penetrated the armor of the infantry fighting vehicle, leaving a clean and narrow gas mark on it, and the tough armor steel was cut neatly. The penetrating power of Wolf Fist is much stronger than that of Split Air Fist, but it does not have the splash damage of Split Sky Fist. The two skills have their own advantages. Looking up at a building at the end of the street, he finally realized how he had neatly cut the building in half. The silence nearby seemed apocalyptic, with only the crackling sound of flames burning. The Mexican army fighting him had completely retreated and evacuated the area. Even the civilians mostly fled, and the remaining people hid in their houses and did not dare to go out. The earbuds had long been damaged in the battle and Alejandro could not be contacted. Broly had no way of understanding the situation in Mexico City. This feeling was terrible. Although the angry form can greatly increase the strength, the shortcoming of losing one's mind is too fatal. Not to mention destroying the Reyes group, it is now very difficult for him to even have a foothold in Mexico. On the empty street, there was a sudden sound of motor, and a motorcycle came from a distance. The driver of the motorcycle raised a hand from a distance to show that he meant no harm. "I am Alejandro's friend. He is waiting for you at this location." Several nearby blocks have been blocked by the retreating Mexican army. They have set up barricades and barbed wire. In half an hour, the US Army will arrive. Here, they are equipped with the most advanced heavy weapons and air support. They will search every corner of this area to find your hiding place. We have channels to safely take you out of this encirclement. The writer said as he carefully handed a piece of paper with an address to Broly. Broly took the note. He can enter the angry form again at any time, and there is no chance that he will break out of the encirclement directly. Even if it doesn't work, the oolong transformation technique can still conceal the truth and deceive the soldiers who come in to search. He's far from reaching the end of his rope, but joining up with Alejandro would be a better option. How should I trust you? The writer hurriedly took out a walkie-talkie. Alejandro's voice came from the other end of the intercom. His breathing was gentle and his voice was normal, not like he was being restricted. The location wasn't too far away, and Broly quickly reached the hideout. It was the basement of an apartment and Alejandro and Wade were both there. The other mercenaries did not participate in this operation, so they were not blocked in the encirclement. Several people gathered around a small table, eating pizza. "Hello." The tall Matt swallowed the remaining pizza in his hand, wiped his greasy hands, and took the initiative to shake Broly's hand. He didn't show any signs of strangeness because of Broly's previous horrific performance. He was a man with a will as strong as steel. "His name is Matt, he's from the CIA." Alejandro introduced, putting down the pizza in his hand. Matt handed over a bag. "Put this on and we can take you away." Broly tore open the bag and took a look and found a camouflage uniform that was exactly his size. It also contained dog tags and soldiers' standard equipment. The dog tags are real, the names on them are real, and the service history can be found in the Pentagon database. Everything is seamless. Matt said with some pride that only the CIA has such terrifying efficiency and energy. "What do I have to give?" Broly asked. He is not a 3-year-old child, so he naturally knows how much resources the CIA has spent on it. The CIA cannot be self-sacrificing and they must have their own demands. Chapter 35. It's very simple. Work for the CIA. As long as you are willing to join, you can become my boss immediately. Matt said that his level in the CIA is not low, and the conditions are already very favorable. After all, the CIA really lacks high-end combat power like Broly. The Hulk directly destroyed a street in New York, and many of the victims were still recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. I believe that the lives and deaths of Mexicans are insignificant in the eyes of the CIA's top brass. It's impossible for me to work for the CIA. Although it will be more difficult, it won't be difficult for me to leave here. Broly said as white chi burst out of his palms like fire. Seeing the anger in Broly's hand, Matt's pupils shrank sharply, showing an extremely fearful look. The CIA has evaluated that Broly's strange energy attack is as powerful as a 105mm howitzer. But if the CIA encounters something difficult, I can't help if the reward is appropriate. Broly said he didn't want to conflict with the CIA if he could. In the previous battle with the Mexican army, the situation developed to this point because of losing control and anger. Improving strength requires a relatively stable external environment, at least not in this world. If the situation is precarious and they are subject to shelling and missile attacks from time to time, even the bellicose Saiyans will have a headache. Matt took out his satellite phone and walked out of the room to report Broly's conditions to his superiors. He didn't come back until more than 10 minutes later. I hope we can work together well, Mr. Broly. The CIA would not be so easy to negotiate with ordinary people, but Broly was obviously not an ordinary person. At the military airport outside Mexico City, C-17 large transport planes are constantly landing under the guidance of the tower. The behemoth, weighing more than 70 tons, was launched from the cabin amidst the roar of the gas turbine and assembled outside the airport. The Big Red Division is the ace unit of the U.S. Army. The first improved series of 1A2 tanks, 1A2 SEV-3, is equipped with new ammunition produced by Stark Industries, 829A4 and programmable air burst bombs, supporting ammunition data links, new thermal imagers and the price of the remote-controlled weapon station is $20 million. A2A3 infantry fighting vehicle with pieces of reactive armor attached. Well-trained, heavily armed elite infantry. The armed forces assembled at the airport alone were enough to sweep across the entire Mexico. If it weren't for the monster in Mexico City that seriously threatened the personal safety of the Mexican leader, they would never ask for help from their northern neighbors. After repairing for a while, the vanguard set off in the direction of Mexico City. During the flight, all the soldiers already knew what kind of enemy they would face after entering Mexico City. Brad Colby, the squad leader of the 1st Platoon, 2nd Platoon, Company B, Reconnaissance Battalion, sat in the passenger seat of the military Humvee, holding a 4A1 rifle in his arms. He is an experienced, accurate and taciturn junior officer. According to me, the battalion commander not only has throat cancer, but his brain has also been taken over by cancer cells. Sitting in the driver's seat was Corporal Josh Person, a chatterbox. He wants us to drive these Green Goblin, a Humvee that can destroy beams and beat it to pieces, came into the city. Does it mean that the pension from the Ministry of Defense is too much? Our weapons can't even penetrate his skin. They had seen videos of Broly fighting the Mexican army and gave him the nickname Green Goblin based on Broly's green chi, which quickly spread throughout the division. Private First Class Harold James in the back seat suddenly said in a somewhat mysterious tone. You know, I heard from Gear of Company A that Green Goblin is actually a product of the military's secret laboratory in Mexico City. He has a cousin who works in the military laboratory. Legend has it that the military captured I Have Little Mutant, and I want to develop Mutant's ultimate weapon. Brad, who had never participated in his subordinates' nonsense, also became interested in this topic. If Green Goblin is their product, then this experimental project is obviously successful. If Green Goblin can be produced, we will retire it soon. Josh looked at the monitor with disdain. No way, Stark Industries, the Pentagon, and our 39 generals will not let this happen. If 50 Green Goblins in service can maintain the security of the United States, then they bureaucrats will have to. If we retire, Stark Industries, which produces weapons for us, will also go bankrupt. They won't let this happen. Aren't we going to come over and eliminate the Green Goblin? Josh Person's nonsense made all the comrades in the car stunned. Soon the reconnaissance battalion reached the blockade set up by the Mexican army. The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. The Mexican soldiers had been frightened by the Green Goblin. They hid behind the bunker and did not dare to show their faces. They looked at them as if they were looking at dead man. Chapter 36. These Mexicans have no morale at all. Brad commented on his peers. If I had to face the Green Goblin in one of those vintage post-World War II cars, that's what I'd look like. Josh said. Soon, Company B entered the area where the fighting took place. After a long time, the flames were still smoldering, and the air was filled with a choking smell of tar. The atmosphere inside the Hummer suddenly became solemn. Although the XVC infantry fighting vehicle is very old, it weighs more than 10 tons, and its defensive capabilities are not comparable to that of the lightweight military Humvee. Company A and Company C organized defenses on the spot. Company B surged westward and reported immediately after discovering the Green Goblin. The brothers from the attack helicopter battalion will immediately come to support. Battalion Commander Ferrando's somewhat hoarse voice sounded in the communication system. Because he had throat cancer, his voice was very strange, like a lizard suddenly learning to speak English. FK. There was a burst of swearing in Company B, because the company commanders of Company A and Company C were well connected at the top, so the dirty work was always assigned to Company B. Military Humvees were driving through the streets. Some of the large craters created by the bombardment were nearly 2 meters deep, destroying the entire road surface and forcing them to take a detour. Just as they were searching carefully, a Hummer drove over from the opposite direction, which was very strange in today's Mexico City. Brad, who was squinting to observe his surroundings, immediately opened his eyes vigilantly. The driver Josh immediately stopped the car in a tacit understanding, and the car body tilted slightly, blocking the path of the oncoming vehicle. After the front car stopped, the entire B company slowly stopped. "Which company are you from?" Brad asked, his finger on the trigger, ready to fire. Although the license plate and model of this car were all very normal, he still felt that he should cross-examine it. "TAC, the transport plane we took had some problems when it landed, so we just arrived now," Matt said very casually, took out a Universal Access Card, CAC card, from his wallet and handed it to Brad. Brad took the access card and examined the photo. The access card is equivalent to a US military ID card. It has a built-in chip that can only be read by a special card reader. It also has the cardholder's profile picture, affiliation, birthday, blood type, and Department of Defense welfare number and identification printed on it. No, it is very difficult to fake. TAC is the code name of the Air Force commander, who calls for air support for the grassroots company during the battle. In order to ensure the unity of the chain of command, they are usually managed in a unified manner. During the operation, they are distributed to the battalion and then to each company. They are not familiar with the members of the company. Because the Air Force instructor belongs to the Air Force, but is also incorporated into the grassroots company during combat, it is one of the easiest positions to manipulate. Brad glanced at the occupants of the Humvee, returned the Universal Access Card to Matt, and then hooked his finger to signal Josh to get out of the way. "Thank you for coming. Without air support, we would not dare to fight the Green Goblin." Broly heard the conversation between the two and guessed that the so-called Green Goblin should refer to himself. He didn't expect that he would somehow steal Norman Osborn's nickname. Matt started the vehicle and headed against the convoy. Seeing that Brad had chosen to let it go, the other members of Company B stopped looking for the vehicle in trouble. The figure of the car quickly disappeared in the rearview mirror. Company Commander Nate's voice rang from the intercom. "Brad, what's going on with that car?" Brad picked up the walkie-talkie and replied, "TAC, there was something wrong with their plane landing, over." Josh started the car. "Squad leader, do you think their identity is really TAC? Why are they in front of us?" Brad shook his head. "Mexico City is so big and the route you choose is different. It's normal to walk in front of us." He suddenly had an intuition that this operation would probably result in nothing. The Humvee quickly drove out of the area controlled by the Mexican army, and the road was smooth. Those Mexican officers did not dare to interrogate a US military vehicle at this special moment. Parking the extremely conspicuous Hummer in an underground parking lot, several people took off their military uniforms and put on their regular clothes. Broly, who had a very conspicuous hairstyle, also put on a baseball cap. After switching to another old Ford Crown Victoria, Matt prepared to leave Mexico City by taking the highway first. Such serious riots have occurred that dozens of countries have issued travel warnings to their residents, warning their residents not to travel to Mexico in the near future. Chapter 37. Some citizens and tourists in Mexico City are also leaving Mexico City through all means. The highway has formed a congestion of more than 10 kilometers, and all vehicles are moving at a slow speed. The old Crown Victoria is hidden in the traffic and is inconspicuous. There was a sudden commotion in front of the highway. One after another, one a 2 set of 3 main battle tanks came from the opposite lane, as well as some 2A3 infantry fighting vehicles. The rubber tracks hit the road, making a deafening swishing sound. These high-speed steel behemoths brazenly demonstrate the power of the United States. God bless America. Some Americans got out of their cars and waved wildly at the passing armored vehicles. The remaining Mexicans looked at this scene with complicated expressions. Matt also leaned out excitedly, and the team shouted, "God bless America." The muscles in Alejandro's cheek twitched. "What's your expression?" Matt sat back in the car seat and looked at Alejandro. "Nothing, I just feel that you are indeed a standard American," Alejandro said. "Bessie's Bess, I'm just completing the tasks assigned to me by my superiors. I still love the United States." Matt was unimpressed. "If they knew that Broly was in this car owned by you, a patriot, I believe that you, a patriot, would be shot into pieces in a second." It took them more than 6 hours to drive out of Mexico City. After the diversion, the road suddenly became wider. During this period, the radio in the car continuously broadcast the progress of Mexico City. The U.S. Army, facing a formidable enemy, had gained nothing. The Green Goblin seemed to have evaporated from Mexico City and disappeared. If I were Philip Pato, I would be very desperate right now. Matt said somewhat helplessly. Alejandro, Broly and Wade were unwilling to leave Mexico just like this. Alejandro wants revenge, Broly also wants to complete the task of destroying the Reyes group, and Wade's reason is that he has already come, so he might as well do something big. In desperation, Matt simply prepared to take action with the three of them. His previous mission was to weaken and destroy the Reyes group. Washington's big shot had long been very dissatisfied with the steady flow of drugs being transported from the U.S. Mexico border. To deal with a cartel like the Reyes group, it is almost impossible to completely uproot it in the Mexican environment, but it is much simpler to break them up. Cartel, an economic term, originally means an organization formed by a series of independent enterprises that produce similar products in order to increase the price of such products and control their output. The most famous cartels are undoubtedly OPEC, the cartel that controls the oil trade, and Die-Bill's Consolidated Mining, the cartel that controls the diamond trade. When cartels are associated with drugs, it's pretty creepy. Gangsters have united together to control the production and price of drugs. The level of organization has evolved from street gangs to warlords and consortiums. The level of competition for territory and markets has also increased from fights and gun battles to the intensity of war. The Guadalajara cartel was the original cartel. They are like a pack of wolves, united for prey. The Reyes brothers are the alpha wolves among the pack, possessing the strongest force and the most wealth. The Reyes brothers have left Mexico City and fled to Mexico City. But they can't stay out of sight for long, otherwise the gang bosses under them will start to lose control. The middle-level gang bosses are eager to get rid of the Reyes brothers and redistribute the Reyes group's trading profits, so that they can easily get more money. Compared to the Reyes brothers, the gang leaders under their command are much more reckless and impulsive, and they are much easier to deal with. As long as these gang leaders get into chaos, the Reyes brothers have to stand up and maintain their authority. Matt said that with the help of the CIA, he knew the Reyes group and the Mata group well. In fact, he judged that even if they did not take action, Palomata would take action against the Reyes group, and even the breakthrough point would be the gang leaders. Which target should I choose? Alejandro's eyes narrowed. How about Malacon from Juarez? He is one of Filipoto's most trusted friends. Matt said. Alejandro's hands trembled. When he was still a prosecutor, it was to investigate the Moroccan case that Philip Pato ordered Chapu to kill his wife and daughter. Chapter 38. Very good. Alejandro smiled a little sadly. The distance from Mexico City to Juarez is nearly 1,800 kilometers, and Moroccan is actually not the most suitable target. Several people constantly changed drivers and traveled day and night. It only took more than 2 days to reach the border city of Juarez. During this period, there was constant news coming from Mexico City. Mexico City is still under martial law. Officials are very taboo about Green Goblin, and rumors are flying everywhere. Juarez, on the border between Mexico and Texas, is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Not only are the Reyes group and the Mata group competing for this territory, but some small drug trafficking groups are also trying to take advantage of the fire. Because it is so easy to transport drugs from here to the United States. Now our problem is how to find Farrakhan. Matt said. As a gang leader, Farrakhan has many enemies and is often assassinated by assassins. Therefore, few people know where his address is. However, these gang leaders have a fatal weakness. They need someone with a clear identity to launder money for them. The money from drug trafficking is calculated in hundreds of millions. This person cannot be unknown. He must have a high status and a large amount of property under his name. He was about to reveal his plan when Broly in the back seat suddenly spoke. I have a way. Do you remember the plan I told you when I just found you? Broly said to Alejandro. He opened the luggage bag that Alejandro brought out from the safe house, took out the combat power detection glasses and put them on. As a gang leader, Farrakhan must have many bodyguards to protect him, and there may even be mutants. The city of Juarez is not big. As long as you find the places where armed men gather and investigate one by one, you will definitely be able to find Farrakhan's lair. Did he? The numbers in the combat power detection glasses jumped, detecting the combat power values of everyone present. Among them, the combat effectiveness of Alejandro, Matt, and Wade is very close, 16, 15 and 17 respectively. Wade, who seems very out of place, actually has the highest combat effectiveness among the three. And his own combat power is 89, which was measured in a calm state. If the mood becomes high, the combat power can increase rapidly. This value should be similar to Goku at the beginning of Dragon Ball. But Broly knew that if he fought, he would win. He has discovered that the combat power detection glasses should be able to infer combat power by receiving energy radiation from the target's body and analyzing the equipped weapons. This conclusion is also reflected in the comics. When Frieza led his men to snatch the Dragon Balls, Krillin and Son Gohan simply held back their anger and deceived the scanning of the combat power detection glasses. If the combat power detection glasses can reveal the target's strength and martial arts level, then Krillin and Sun Wuhan's positions will be exposed immediately. Another very obvious evidence is that Broly had a fighting strength of 10,000 after his birth, but he was exiled with almost no resistance. King Vegeta did not give specific combat power in the comics, but Vegeta once said that he surpassed his father when he was a child. When he said this, his combat power was 18,000. It can be seen that the upper limit of King Vegeta's combat power is 18,000, which is about 10,000. It would never be easy to subdue and exile Broly, who had 10,000 combat power. The real reason should be that although Broly has 10,000 fighting ki, the fragile body of a young child cannot exert the destructive power that ki should have. Broly could also understand why his combat power detection glasses gave a too low combat power of 15 when he first came to Earth. His body had not weakened in any way. It became weaker because his energy was gone. Because of the dimensions of the universe, it may be much more difficult to increase chi in the Marvel universe than in the Dragon Ball universe. It's really difficult, facing Frieza who came to Earth 12 years later. When he first arrived, he should still be carrying the energy of the Dragon Ball universe, and in his final form he could exert a full combat power of 120 million. If you can delay time and let Frieza's energy slowly drain away under the rules of the universe, you may be able to defeat him. Unfortunately, King Frieza is obviously not the stupid boss in ordinary comics. After discovering this situation, he may directly choose to destroy the Earth. As for the physical strength of Saiyans, they are not as powerful as they think. Most of their unparalleled destructive power is due to the increase in chi. Many places in the comics have shown the power of Saiyans when they are not using their energy. On the spaceship flying to Namek, Wukong already felt his body was heavy after practicing under 20 times gravity in the early days. He was not carrying any weight at the time and was wearing a light martial arts uniform. In Volume 36, Trunks and Vegeta train together in the gravity chamber. With only 150 times gravity, they can hardly move their feet and need to transform into a Super Saiyan. Chapter 39. In the same volume, Goku was training in the underworld, and Kaioshin imposed 4 loads weighing 10 tons, a total of 40 tons. Under normal circumstances, he was directly burdened by the weight and could not lift his hands. He could move freely after transforming into a Super Saiyan. In the battles of Dragon Ball, those operations that punch through the earth are mainly due to the power of ki. Physical strength is not crucial, as long as it can withstand the chi in the body and fully exert the destructive power of the chi. At the moment, Broly's physical strength has an overwhelming advantage over Goku in his childhood. When his energy was still relatively weak, this advantage was decisive. As the chi grows, it will be quickly smoothed out. These glasses are so weird. Are they smart glasses like Google Glass? Wade looked at the combat power detection glasses curiously. These are combat power detection glasses, which can detect a person's combat power file size, but the error is very large when used to measure the combat power of ordinary people. As long as living creatures possess chi, ordinary people cannot exert the power of chi at all, so it is not reliable to use combat power detection glasses to evaluate the combat effectiveness of ordinary people. The combat effectiveness of the 3 Wades was measured to be only a dozen, which looked similar to those of ordinary soldiers. However, in a suitable battlefield, it was not difficult for them to fight 1 against 10. Matt was a little moved. The technological level of these glasses was obviously extremely high. He had never seen similar products in the CIA. Then what is the combat effectiveness of the few of us? The ranking of force value is a topic that everyone likes to hear and is easily divided. After learning about their respective combat capabilities, Wade's tail was almost raised to the sky, while Alejandro and Matt both looked a little ugly. Let me take a look at the people in Juarez who have a strength exceeding 10. Even if an untrained ordinary person holds a firearm, their combat effectiveness will not exceed 8. Those with more than 10 are almost all well-trained warriors. The high-intensity training subtly improved their chi. Broly set the search mode on his glasses. There was a burst of numbers in the field of vision, and the glasses quickly completed the citywide combat power search, screening out those with abnormal combat power from among 1.3 million people. 253 people, concentrated on 7 enemies respectively. One of them has a combat power of 53. He should be a mutant or Superman. Broly said. That should be Farrakhan's hiding place. I know that he bought a mutant as his bodyguard because he was very afraid of someone assassinating him. Alejandro said that he has been consciously collecting information about those enemies. Then let's go. Matt didn't want to waste time, so he quickly started the car, and under Broly's guidance, drove towards Farrakhan's hiding place. What's your fighting capacity? Wade was very curious. He wanted to know how strong Broly was, who could destroy the Mexican army head-on. In the normal form, it is 89. If it is in the angry form, the combat power will instantly soar to 445, and it will continue to increase with the battle. Broly mainly told Matt so that the CIA could have a clear judgment on his own strength and prevent misjudgment from causing unpleasant things for both parties. Although his angry form has only been improved 5 times and does not look as good as the giant ape form, this 5 times is an overall increase of 5 times in strength, speed, physique, and energy. Although the strength and energy of the giant ape form have increased tenfold, the actual combat effectiveness is not that exaggerated because the size has become too large. Vegeta transformed into a giant ape on the earth. According to the setting, the combat power should be 180,000, but in the actual battle, he ignored one thing and the other, and did not show the despair of being crushed by the combat power at all. Remember, it's best not to use ability. If witnesses see it, it will be very troublesome, especially the green energy pulse. If you want to watch the full version for free, please search on Baitu, Matt said as he drove. This kind of trivial matter is not something that needs to be solved with fists. Believe me, my marksmanship is also very accurate. Broly put on his sunglasses and wrapped a scarf around the lower half of his face. Alejandro and Wade are putting on body armor, they will still die if they are shot by bullets. I can attest to that. Alejandro said. As the distance to the destination continues to shrink, there are fewer and fewer vehicles traveling together. The second car is almost invisible on the wide highway. With the deafening sound of the engine, a motorcycle caught up with their car. A Mercedes man with a mohawk looked blatantly at the situation inside the car. We've been targeted. Wade said nonchalantly, obviously, Farrakhan's men have been watching this road. It seems we have won the lottery. Chapter 40. Soon, 3 Volkswagen Kiloway commercial vehicles caught up with them. The windows were covered with coating, making it difficult to see what was going on inside the car. A red light and all the cars stopped. It's time to get to work. Matt said, drawing a 4A1, and Broly used the HK-433 from earlier. Kiloway's car door was opened, and several strange-looking gangster gunmen were about to get out of the car. The first person was shot down before the solace of his feet touched the ground, and a whole car of people was blocked in the car. Broly squeezed the trigger and fired wildly at the opponent's car. Soon, all 3 Kiloway were shot into sieves. The gunman who was shot weakly slid out of the car door. Now they could finally get out of the car. The man riding the motorcycle started the motorcycle in fear. He did not expect that in less than 3 seconds, the domineering gunmen in the gang would have turned into corpses. Before he could drive very far, a bloody flower exploded on his head. The out-of-control motorcycle rushed off the road and drove more than 10 meters before falling to the ground with the body. It's really accurate. Matt raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. In his expectation, a guy as powerful as Broly should disdain firearms. A rabble. The Crown Victoria moved on, leaving bodies on the ground. Soon, they arrived at Farrakhan's mansion. The luxurious white walls, wrought iron gates, gardens, fountains, and marble columns make you feel like you are in the Palace of Versailles. When I saw this house, I realized that drug trafficking is really profitable. Wade sighed with emotion, and the next moment, he stretched out his gun and shot a gunman holding a grenade launcher. This shot seemed to press some button, and gunfire erupted inside and outside the mansion. The 4 people quickly advanced towards the interior of Farrakhan's mansion, and the gunmen who blocked them along the way were shot and killed with almost no resistance. Soon, they caught Farrakhan, his wife, and 2 sons trying to leave through the tunnel. There was also a thin, middle-aged Latino. Kill them, Coco! Farrakhan ordered the Latin American somewhat hysterically. He is a Mexican with a friendly face, a neatly trimmed beard, a somewhat burly figure, and wearing formal clothes. When ordinary people see him, their first impression will definitely be that of a middle-level manager of a large multinational company, and they will never think of him as a drug lord with bloody hands. The Latin American mutant opened his hands and was about to activate his ability when a dagger was thrust into his lower jaw and penetrated his brain. Broly pulled out the dagger, shook off the blood, and inserted it back into the sheath on Alejandro's leg. Matt patted Alejandro on the shoulder. The rest is your time. Wade opened his mouth to say something, then turned his head after hesitating for a moment. Alejandro walked up to Farrakhan expressionlessly, and under his cold gaze, Farrakhan quickly fell to his knees. Her wife trembled and knelt down with her 2 children. He looked down at Farrakhan, and then at the dining table not far away. The food on it was very rich. Every night, how many families die because of you? But you are enjoying dinner leisurely in this palace. Farrakhan held his son's hand and forced himself to look at Alejandro, his rapid breathing revealing the tension in his heart. But years of experience in gunfire and bullets made him quickly hide his nervousness. His expression became natural again, and he looked at Alejandro as if he were looking at an old friend for many years. I know your wife. She is a very gentle woman. Do you think she will be proud of you now? Alejandro remained expressionless, but Broly saw veins suddenly bulging in the hand holding the gun. What about my daughter? Do you still know my daughter? Farrakhan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Your daughter, you know that I always put the option of force last, but Philip Pato is different. He is very irritable and I can't influence his decision. Alejandro said word for word. So I will kill Philip Pato too. Farrakhan knew that he was certain to die today. The muscles on his face were trembling, his eyes were red, and tears were surging. At least not in front of the children. Bang! 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 3 gunshots were fired, and blood splashed into Farrakhan's eyes. As you wish. Alejandro did the gentlemanly thing. Farrakhan opened his eyes wide and looked at Alejandro. He wiped his eyes, and the blood on his fingers was bright red and dazzling. After doing all this, Alejandro dropped the rifle in his hand and sat directly on the ground without saying a word. Chapter 41. Matt shook his head and stepped forward, hitting Farrakhan's vein with the edge of his palm, knocking him unconscious. Isn't it a little hard to accept, kid? He looked at Wade. I thought that as a mercenary, you were used to this kind of thing. Wade pinched his nose. That's why I left Africa. Matt dragged Farrakhan from the dining room to the study. I didn't expect you to look unreliable, but Rico is a good person. I want to tell you something. About 60 kilometers away from here, there is a house with about 40 corpses built into the wall. There are men, there are women, there are old people, there are children, all of them are enough to open a human body museum. And the culprit is this guy. Matt hurriedly brought a large bucket of water from the kitchen and looked at Wade. After listening to this, do you feel better? Wade took a deep breath and let it out slowly, finally no longer looking like Sima. Now that everything is all right, come and help me. We still have things to do. Whether we can drive this guy Philip Pato out of the rat hole depends on the next 30 minutes. Broly dug out a large fan of beef from the large refrigerator in the kitchen. He brought a bundle of dry firewood, lit a bonfire, then cut the beef with a kitchen knife, skewered it on iron skewers, and grilled it. If you want to read the complete version for free, please search it on Baidu. After working for so long, he was already hungry. Not long after, the beef covered with marbled fat began to sizzle under the flames. The oil was constantly bursting on the surface of the meat, and a very attractive aroma came from the meat. Sprinkling some salt on it, he directly pulled the hot piece of meat off the iron skewer and devoured it. Alejandro came over and sat next to Broly. Thank you, I have been waiting for this day for 5 years. Broly grabbed a large piece of meat in his hand, stuffed it into his mouth, and chewed hard. No need to thank me, I'm just enjoying the battle. Alejandro shrugged, walked into the kitchen, and took out a lot of ingredients. Farrakhan focuses on enjoyment, and the ingredients in the kitchen are always the freshest. He marinated the ingredients slightly and skewered them into skewers. Not long after, Matt and Wade also finished taking care of Farrakhan and walked out of the study. Wade picked up a skewer and stuffed it into his mouth. As soon as he took the first bite, he was stunned. Wait, are these truffles? He glanced at the other ingredients on the skewers, and his face suddenly looked heartbroken. Kobe beef, foie gras, matsutake mushrooms. Are you going to grill and eat these ingredients like this? Broly opened a jar of black caviar and poured the whole jar into his mouth. No matter how expensive the food is, when you put it in your mouth, you will poop out. Although Saiyans eat an astonishing amount, they don't care much about the taste of food. Vegeta even ate the palm of an intelligent being alive when he was hungry. Deadpool shut up silently and stuffed food into his mouth as hard as he could. He just wanted to eat as much as possible before Broly, a man who chewed peonies. All he ate at this time was money. Matt's food appearance is much better. He is a CIA agent and can eat and drink at public expense. Unlike Deadpool, who has never seen the world. Farrakhan has already revealed the phone numbers and scope of activities of other gang leaders. The next step we have to do is to incite these gang leaders. It's a pity that it's Farrakhan, otherwise we can make him an informant and make the plan go further smoothly. Broly, who was fighting for the food with Wade, raised his head and wiped his greasy fingers. It's not impossible. As he said this, he activated his own transformation technique and transformed into the appearance of Farrakhan, but his height and size were slightly larger than those of the original Farrakhan. Wait, let me adjust it again. After transforming again, no flaws could be seen. Broly looked at his hands and said to several people, how about it? Can you see the flaw? The three of them were shocked by Broly's sudden transformation ability. Especially Matt, he only now realizes why Broly was so confident in Mexico City at that time. With the ability to shapeshift at will, as long as he doesn't go crazy and seek death, it is difficult to fall into despair. Alejandro was the one who was most familiar with Farrakhan among the four people present. He squinted his eyes and observed. After a while, he shook his head, I can't see any difference, but Farrakhan likes to wear Dior's cologne. It's best to spray a little. Those gang leaders are very cautious, and a small oversight will arouse their suspicion. Chapter 42. Matt suppressed the surprise in his heart and said, then we have to torture Farrakhan again and ask for more details. Broly added 3 skill points to the oolong transformation technique. After the incident in Mexico City, he discovered that the oolong transformation technique is very practical in human society, and it is not a waste to spend 3 skill points on it. After reaching the second level, the oolong transformation technique is the same as the PUER transformation technique and can maintain the transformed state for a long time. The price difference between the two is 10 points, so exchanging it for 1 skill point can only mean no loss or gain. Oolong transformation technique LV4, file size as you wish, only a handful of outstanding little monsters in the Southern Transformation Kindergarten can practice the transformation technique to this level. They can enlarge and shrink their body size 10 times through transformation, and maintain the transformation technique during the battle and exert 10% of the original strength. Broly was a little surprised. With the skill file size Rui, the oolong transformation technique became more practical, and he could feel that the transformation became more convenient. He could become the same as the goal in his heart without even trying. Exactly the same. He looked at his attribute panel again. After this period of hard training and the natural growth of Saiyans, his strength, physique, and agility have all increased a little. After hesitation for a moment, he added the attribute points he gained when he reached level 7 to his intelligence. His mind became clear for a while, and he found that his thinking had become much sharper. The debuff that halved the intelligence in the angry form was too fatal. It was okay that he was not strong now. He was afraid that as his strength increased, he would accidentally destroy the earth directly after entering the angry form. Saiyans cannot survive in the universe. If the earth is destroyed, he will definitely die. Mexicali, Baja California Norte. A luxurious Rolls-Royce Phantom drove into the warehouse area like a ghost. A group of porters with strong builds and rifles in their hands surrounded the luxury car that should not be here. This is Benjamin Felix's territory, what are you doing here? Broly, who transformed into Farrakhan, closed the small book and hid it in the lining pocket of his suit. It recorded all the details that Matt had tortured on Farrakhan. I'm Farrakhan, here to see Benjamin. The gunmen knew Farrakhan and immediately softened their attitude. The leader turned on the intercom and informed Benjamin of the situation. It didn't take long for the three of them to be invited in. Many people in the Reyes group knew Alejandro, and he was left outside to monitor the situation. Wade, who played the driver, and Matt, who played the bodyguard, were left outside the warehouse, and Benjamin only allowed Farrakhan to enter alone. Broly walked into the warehouse, and the enthusiastic Benjamin immediately came forward, and the two gave a warm hug in Mexico City. "What's the matter, my friend?" suddenly came to Mexicali. Benjamin is very enthusiastic on the surface, but very wary on the inside. Philip Pato was very afraid of meeting the bosses in his various territories, and few bosses would leave their own territory and go to other people's territories. This was very dangerous and could easily never come back. "My people are dead, Belomata raided my home, and now I have nothing, Benjamin." Broly went behind Matt's prepared words. The fighting in Juarez cannot be hidden from these fox-like leaders, so it is better to speak out and put the blame on Palomata. Benjamin raised his eyebrows, and the enthusiasm on his face disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. "I'm so sorry, my friend, but you can stay in Mexicali for as long as you like. Philip Pato is finished." Because of the riots in Mexico City, his connections at the government level were destroyed, and his gunmen also suffered heavy losses in the offensive at Paloma Towers. Now he seems to have been pulled out. "A lion with teeth and claws." Broly recited the words Matt had prepared for him word for word. These words are true, Philip Pato is indeed weaker than ever. A flash of emotion flashed in Benjamin's eyes. In the Reyes group, he is the strongest leader besides the Philip Pato brothers. If anyone could replace the Philip Pato brothers to lead the Reyes group, it would be him. No, it won't be long before the Reyes group should be renamed the Felix group. But Benjamin hasn't quite gone to his head yet. This matter is not that simple. We have no one in the Mexican government, and Palomata will not just let us reintegrate the organization. Several other people will not agree to let me be their boss. The most important thing, yes, Kingpin's view, what if he still supports Philip Pato? Chapter 43. Friends, it was not only Philip Pato who was hit hard, but Palomata also suffered great losses. It is impossible for those congressmen to let the Palomata family dominate. In Mexico, where there is only one drug lord, these congressmen will not there will be a foothold. Broly continued, "If you don't control the organization, others will step forward to replace Philip Pato. In the next 10 years, do you still want to work hard for others and eat what others leave? The leftovers." Broly memorized his lines, not knowing who the Kingpin really was, so he simply ignored it. This sentence completely dispelled Benjamin's hesitation. He is also an ambitious person and does not want to be inferior to others anymore. 30 years ago, Mexican lawmakers controlled the drug trade in Mexico. But these congressmen will not die with their own hands. That would be too dishonorable. They use their power to control drug dealers to sell drugs for themselves and enjoy the commission. But after the end of the Cold War, this situation completely changed. Without the Soviet Union as its rival, Mexico abolished a large number of secret agents, military and police departments. Just like Chongqing's were abolished, these unemployed agents and police officers were quickly absorbed by the drug cartels. With the help of these ex-militants, the cartel quickly formalized and completely lost control. Those congressmen have made a mistake once and will not make it a second time. Then what do you want, Farrakhan? He knew that Farrakhan must have his own needs for wanting to push him to the top so passionately. "I want my territory back, my men back. Benjamin, Belomata killed my wife and children. If he takes over all of Mexico's drug share, then my hope of revenge is zero." Broly said that his acting skills were not good and he did not express the pain and hatred of his wife and children. It's just that Benjamin has been immersed in his crazy ambition and completely ignored his sense of incongruity. "Ha ha ha, I will help you get revenge, friend." The enthusiasm on Benjamin's face returned. He hugged Broly affectionately and patted his shoulders hard. "Now, let us contact a few other people. Let them realize who the new boss is." He almost couldn't wait to pick up the phone and dialed several other people's numbers. "Philip Pato is finished. We need to meet and talk about how to develop the organization next. I have a place in Ensenada, how about it being there?" In a seaside mansion, the gang leaders of the Reyes group gathered together. What happened in Mexico City frightened them all. To this day, the Mexican president still dares not return to Mexico City for work. Thousands of U.S. Army troops blocked a quarter of Mexico City, but still no trace of the Green Goblin. He seemed to evaporate in the air. They will not forget that Green Goblin has been causing trouble for the Reyes group since it appeared, and even kidnapped Filipoto's daughter. With a glass of champagne in his hand, Wade was drinking heavily with the drivers brought by other gang leaders, casually gathering information. Matt stood on the high ground and monitored the surrounding environment. The leaders were seated at a conference table in the courtyard below. This meeting will take away everything from the Reyes brothers, and he does not believe that the cunning Philip Potto knows nothing. Philip Potto, he can no longer protect us. He can't even protect himself. Benjamin's first words made everyone commotion. Although everyone began to think about it and speculated on the purpose of this gathering, the prestige accumulated by Philip Potto during the 15 years of ruling the Reyes group made them still fearful. We can protect ourselves, and even get more money than before because there are fewer people sharing the money. Why should we work for others when we can be our own boss? Broly glanced at Benjamin, which was different from what was discussed before. Benjamin did not come up to be the boss, but kept stating that the Reyes brothers were no longer useful to the organization. No one can become the boss just by being brave and ruthless. Matt's voice rang out from the headset in his ears. Broly made a hidden gesture and said, "What about the Mata group? Without a boss, we are no match for below Mata. He will defeat us one by one." All the leaders nodded at his words. Palomata is a beast of power. What he wants is not to make money safely, but to rule the entire underground world of Mexico and become the king of Mexico. As for Paloma Tower, I will resist it. War is definitely very expensive. I need to take part of the profits to fund the war. Benjamin said that he was very satisfied with Farrakhan's success and was ready to allocate a piece of territory to him after he took over. Then what's the difference between you and Philip Potto? Someone said dissatisfiedly. The difference is that I will do better than Philip Potto. Philip Potto is too weak. I will take the initiative to attack. Palomata is not as powerful as we thought. I will seize more territory. More shares. Benjamin said. Chapter 44. What about the Kingpin? Kingpin was mentioned again. Kingpin won't support losers. Benjamin said enthusiastically. The sound of propellers suddenly sounded in the sky, and a helicopter flew towards here. The bodyguards shouted in a panic. Hundreds of gunmen appeared from nowhere and completely surrounded them. They were caught off guard and were pushed to the ground with almost no resistance and were disarmed. The helicopter landed in the yard, its door wide open. Papa Philip Potto stepped off the helicopter, applauding and pointing to the headset in his ear. Wonderful, very wonderful speech, Benjamin. I was very moved. He said and shook hands with Benjamin who was sitting at the chairman's table. How's your family doing now? Hey. Benjamin opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Stand up. This is my seat. Philip Potto suddenly roared like an angry lion. Benjamin, who was originally high-spirited, became disgraced at the moment, as if he had seen a cat and a mouse. Philip Potto sat directly on the chairman's table. Under his gaze, the faces of the gang leaders became a little unnatural. First of all, I need to thank Farrakhan. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have known there was such an interesting meeting. He glanced at Benjamin and spoke. In the future, I will let Farrakhan run the territory of northern Baja California. Philip Potto's words immediately caused an uproar among everyone, and Benjamin jumped up and pointed at Farrakhan and cursed loudly. Only now did he realize belatedly that the reason why Farrakhan encouraged him to stand up and fight for the boss's position was because he was eyeing his own territory. The other leaders also looked at Farrakhan with some dissatisfaction. Although these leaders also have a competitive relationship, using such despicable means to seize other people's territory really crosses the bottom line. Philip Potto watched this scene quietly. This was the result he wanted, and his forces suffered heavy losses in Mexico City. These gunmen were the last remaining force he had managed to organize. Prestige alone cannot suppress these ambitious men. Farrakhan is the target he launched, and he wants to attract all hatred to Farrakhan. Thinking of this, he raised his hand, and two gunmen stepped forward and dragged Benjamin, who had been uttering obscene words to Broly, to the center of the courtyard. Desperate, Benjamin began to beg for mercy. He did not want to die. Boom! A gunshot rang out, and Benjamin's blood-stained face still had an expression of disbelief, and he fell to the ground helplessly. Broly ate the snacks on the table boredly. The protagonist had already appeared, so there was no need for him to act anymore. It was he who called Philip Potto to inform him, and Matt was worried that the drug lord, who was beginning to show signs of fatigue, had not received the news that his subordinates were preparing to commit rebellion. His nonchalance angered the other leaders. It's amazing, Farrakhan. It seems that you will become the new boss soon. A boss stood up and patted Farrakhan's cheek, then walked up to Philip Potto. Philly Potto, I think you might as well beat me to death, so that I won't be killed by others for no reason in the future. Philip Potto stood up and put his arm around the leader's shoulders affectionately. How could it be, Rafa? We are all the closest friends. Farrakhan only told me everything out of loyalty as a friend. Killing Benjamin alone is enough to shock everyone else. If he continues to kill him, the entire Reyes group will fall apart. This is what Philip Potto doesn't want to see. Right, Farrakhan? Philip Potto said with a smile, and his face showed no trace of the harshness he had when he first appeared. Broly was already ready to make a move. In fact, when Philip Potto got off the helicopter, he was ready to kill him. Because he had the mentality of watching a show, he restrained himself now. Now it seems that Philip Potto can only show off his power for so long, and it is time to resolve this boring farce. Next, we're going to discuss how to kill the Green Goblin. Philip Potto's words saved his life. Broly became interested and prepared to take action later to listen to the plans of these drug dealers. Are you kidding, Reyes? We will never be a match for a monster like the Green Goblin that can confront the army head-on. One of the leaders jumped up immediately. Although drug traffickers have an advantage in the war with the Mexican government forces, a big reason is that a large number of military officers and congressmen have been bribed by them. The actions of the Mexican government forces are unilateral and transparent. The fight between the two sides was really just half a fight. Chapter 45. Green Goblin is far from as strong as you think. After the Yankee army came, didn't he hide immediately? And this time I have caught his weak spot. Philip Potto said very proudly. Green Goblin is an unavoidable obstacle for him to regain control of the Reyes group. Anyone who knows a little bit about the inside story knows that Green Goblin is here for him. Broly was a little curious, he didn't know what his weakness was yet. The next moment, his brother Miguel pulled Isabella out of the helicopter, followed by a very tall and strong Asian. Isabella looked around at everyone with horrified eyes. Philip Potto protected her very well, and this was the first time she met these gang leaders. You should know that I have been looking for my lovely Isabella. Just 3 days ago, my friend at the airport gave me a clue that Isabella was seen on a plane bound for the United States. La! My people in the United States found her quickly. Philip Potto glanced at everyone and said somewhat proudly. 3 of Green Goblin's associates were also found together. His words immediately caused a commotion. Green Goblin is an extremely mysterious guy in everyone's eyes, and now Philip Potto has actually revealed a part of his mysterious identity. Puff! But Wade, who was drinking champagne, accidentally spit out the champagne in his mouth and coughed violently. As Farrakhan's men, he and Matt were not restricted by Philip Potto's men. Sorry, I choked. Mr. Philip Potto, please continue. Philip Potto glanced at Wade dissatisfiedly. It seemed that Farrakhan had indeed suffered a heavy blow, and his men were all crooked. But that's fine, because Farrakhan, who is alone, cannot control Baja California Norte and can only be his puppet. So what if we catch Green Goblin's accomplice? We can't kill him. Someone questioned. This is not a problem at all. Jin is also very interested in Green Goblin. He was very interested after hearing about my plan and provided help for my plan. Philip Potto's words hint at the close relationship between himself and Kingpin. He found a powerful martial artist for me, Mr. Daimon Goro, who will help us take down the Green Goblin. Philip Potto said, pointing with both hands at the Asian man standing next to Isabella. Daimon Goro's face didn't look good. If possible, he didn't want to deal with these notorious drug dealers. But he wants revenge for his disciple Shachin Angel. And in Mexico City, thousands of people died directly and indirectly because of Broly. If in order to eliminate this kind of evil spirit, Daimon Goro can barely accept it by temporarily cooperating with Kingpin. It's just that the relationship between Angel and him was very secretive, and he still couldn't figure out how Kingpin knew about it. Shachin Angel's superb throwing skills were learned from Daimon Goro. Daimon Goro had high hopes for this talented disciple and valued him very much. Unfortunately, Shadust Angel was not interested in inheriting the mantle, and returned to the United States after feeling like he couldn't learn anything new. Despite this, the relationship between the master and the apprentice is still very close. Shachin Angel will go to Japan from time to time to meet the master and donate a large amount of funds to the gym. That Green Goblin is very powerful. I am far from his opponent, but the best thing about Jujutsu is to defeat the strong with the weak. I will limit his activities and provide opportunities for your attacks. After Daimon Goro said this, he began to close his eyes and rest. First, in order to deal with monsters like Green Goblin, he had to adjust his own state to the best. The second is that he doesn't want to have more interactions with these drug lords who have blood on their hands. Philip Potto was very proud. If the Green Goblin is captured in this operation, his reputation will rise to a whole new level. The Green Goblin, which had disgraced the Mexican government and suffered heavy losses, was subdued by a drug lord. The president's weakness is so obvious that civilians will trust drug lords more than the police. At that time, the Reyes group will become Mexico's shadow government, and he will be able to rule Mexico together with the president. As for his old rival Balomata, he is just a joker who can be destroyed with a wave of his hand. Several bosses were discussing how to concoct the Green Goblin, as if they had already caught the Green Goblin. Some people suggested tying the Green Goblin's limbs and head with steel ropes and dismembering the body in 5 trucks, some suggested throwing the Green Goblin into a sulfuric acid pool, some suggested using an electric chair, and others suggested impaling the Green Goblin on a spear. Sunburned to death in the desert. They proudly revealed all the methods they had used to torture traitors and enemies. Broly was interested in suggesting decapitation with a chainsaw, but was told by the leaders that it was old-fashioned and had no new ideas. Chapter 46. Isabella, who was sitting next to her father, turned pale when she heard it, and covered her mouth to prevent herself from spitting out. She got up from her seat and rushed to the toilet, almost vomiting out her bile. Although she had heard that her father was very cruel, this was the first time she knew the specific evil deeds of the Reyes group. Those uncles used to be very kind and friendly in front of her, but now they showed their original appearance, which frightened her to the core. Are these really things that humans can do? Holding a handful of water, Isabella washed her face carefully. Isabella was a little confused. She didn't know where to go. A hand reached out from behind quietly and covered her mouth with lightning speed, then picked her up and dragged her to a utility room. Don't cry, don't shout, or I'll break your neck. A voice said close to the ear. Isabella immediately nodded obediently. After being kidnapped once, she had gained experience and did not panic like last time. The hand slowly loosened. Alex. Isabella turned and looked at Alejandro. It was Alejandro who cared for Isabella during her kidnapping. Perhaps because of Stockholm Syndrome, Isabella believed in Alejandro very much. It seems that this little girl likes you. Wade standing aside said. He was only halfway through his SY words when he had to stop because Alejandro pulled out a pistol and put it on his butt. Where are the 3 people who were with you now? Matt sighed and decided to ask it himself. They are in the underground wine cellar, guarded by 5 people, but I don't recommend you to rescue him, there is a monster there. Isabella glanced at Alejandro, lowered her head and said. Monster, please describe his appearance. Matt said. Well, he's bald and has a tattoo of a target on his forehead. Wade burst out laughing. With a target tattooed on his forehead, is he begging for someone to blow his head off? Matt isn't as optimistic as Wade. Now the situation is a bit troublesome. The person standing behind the Reyes group and the Mata group is indeed Kingpin. This person's name is Bullseye, and he is a killer under Kingpin. He is very powerful. No wonder the Reyes group and the Mata group, the special group, is so difficult to deal with, and their backer behind the scenes is actually Kingpin. Damn fake, are there any criminal organizations that have nothing to do with Kingpin? Kingpin apparently also had a hidden hand in the plan. Bullseye has the innate ability to throw, able to hit the target with incredible accuracy with any object in his hand. The CIA had a conflict with him, and Bullseye killed more than 30 well-trained agents with just a box of toothpicks. When Broly was fighting Daimon Goro, there was such a marksman lying in wait, which was very deadly. Your friend has a loose mouth? Matt asked. He should have revealed everything he knows. Wade said awkwardly. Jackhammer is very timid, which is why he is nicknamed a weasel. As long as he is slightly frightened, his mouth will shake out everything he knows like a funnel. Then it's a miracle that he has been able to work as a mercenary for so long without dying under the gunfire of his companions. Matt made a sarcastic remark and pondered for a moment. Kingpin is a very cautious person and must have analyzed Broly's strength in advance, but he still sent such a combination. In his judgment, this duo is obviously enough to deal with Broly, and there may be other means lurking. Based on Kingpin's previous successes, I think if we do nothing, Broly is likely to be killed. Wade was a little shocked. He couldn't imagine how to kill someone as powerful as Broly. Then let's do something. Alejandro said in a somewhat deep voice. Obviously, what we can do is ambush Bullseye. We already know where he is now, and we also know that he needs to snipe Broly. The route of action is very determined. Matt said playfully, looking around, it's just that Bullseye is very tricky. Don't expect to be able to kill him. We just need to delay enough time for Broly to defeat Daimon Goro first. Then the mission is completed. If I can't do such a simple task, I will perform a handstand and eat shit. Wade said carelessly. I have been a dead man a long time ago. If I can't stand it, I can take the back seat. Alejandro said, his words causing Isabella's body to tremble violently. Chapter 47. Relax, it's not difficult to delay enough time just by suppressing vitality. Bullseye is not strong enough to ignore bullets. Matt said with a smile, and then hit Isabella's vein with the edge of his palm, knocked her unconscious. I'll notify Broly first and prepare to take action. Broly, who was sitting outside, was already bored. He had even eaten up the snacks next to him. A group of gang leaders hugged the call girls who had been prepared and bragged. Why can't you do it yet? He's already so horny and thirsty. Broly thought this in his mind as he stared at Daimon Goro with piercing eyes. This man is the strongest person he has seen so far. His aura is as solid as a mountain, and his muscles are as knotted as tree roots. He has obviously undergone extremely hard training and is not one of those mutants who rely on ability to make a living. Daimon Goro saw Farrakhan driving away the call girl and staring at him with a very strange look. He felt a chill and silently moved his chair to distance himself from Broly. Suddenly, Broly's temperament, which was originally boring, changed, and like a hungry wolf, he picked up the gang leader next to him from the arms of the call girl. Boy, you were the one who suggested cutting off the Green Goblin's head and soaking it in a cesspool. What are you doing, Farrakhan? Are you crazy? The gang leader next to Broly looked at Farrakhan, who suddenly went crazy, and was surprised. When did Farrakhan become so strong that he could lift a person up so easily? He is not Farrakhan. With such a strong spirit, he is not an ordinary person. Daimon Goro stood up and said very seriously. He took off his shirt, revealing his muscles as strong as granite. He opened his hands and made a judo starting position, as if facing a formidable enemy. Boom! Broly released his oolong transformation technique and revealed his original form. The leader who was carried in the air recognized his identity almost instantly. Green Goblin, you are Green Goblin. He was incontinent, and smelly urine dripped down his trouser legs and onto the ground. Broly casually threw it into the air, then raised his palm and pointed it into the air, and a white energy whizzed away. Boom! There was a violent explosion, and a moment later, the debris fell to the ground in pieces. How about you? Why don't you wait until I get rid of these bastards first and then compete? In this case, I will lose part of my energy, which will be more beneficial to you. Broly said, crossing his arms. You are a devil. Daimon Goro looked at the pieces of flesh and blood falling on the ground, his muscles tensed and he was on high alert. Compared to me, you are the real devil who colludes with these drug lords who have countless evil deeds. Broly performed a satanic fighting technique. Daimon Goro was over 2 meters tall, a head taller than Broly, who was not in his angry form. In order to eliminate enemies of humanity like you, what does it mean to cooperate with gangs? Daimon Goro suddenly shouted loudly and slammed his hands on the ground. The ground shook violently, with him as the center, and cracked in all directions like a spider web. The gang leaders and call girls were just affected by the aftermath, and they fell to the ground screaming, and some even had their leg bones broken. Broly, who was the first to bear the brunt, felt a destructive energy passing along the ground and was about to send him flying into the air. Strength originates from the ground, and fists originate from the heart. As long as there is no flying in the air, whether it is punching, throwing, kicking, splitting and other techniques, the force must be exerted from the ground, relying on the infinite bearing power of the earth to exert force. If I am accidentally beaten into the air by my opponent, then I am a human being and I am a fish, and I can only be slaughtered by others. Daimon Goro's huge body was unexpectedly flexible, and he rushed towards Broly like an angry rhinoceros. He made a fist with one arm and took advantage of his tall stature to strike at Broly from a high position. This angry blow would knock even an elephant to the ground. After being completely broken up, he can then continuously throw skills to completely knock down the enemy. As a master of judo, any enemy who exposes a flaw in front of him will be suppressed until death by a wave of furious attacks. But the inevitable blow was actually caught. Broly grabbed Daimon Goro's wrist, stepped on his left foot, wrapped his arm inwards, and punched Daimon Goro in the air with a bang. After learning the Wolf Fang Wind Fist, his attacks were as fast as lightning, and Daimon Goro had no time to resist. The extremely fierce punch was like a bomb exploding, causing the ground to tremble violently. Daimon Goro spurted out a mouthful of blood. If it weren't for the combat intuition he had honed over many years, which allowed him to protect his abdomen with chi immediately, his body would have been directly penetrated. Chapter 48. Broly threw 3 more punches, one of which was dodged, and the remaining 2 punches all hit Daimon Goro's vitals. He let go of his hand, letting Daimon Goro fall to the ground and gasp. This move is not bad, but your ki is already weak, and you still need to use this trick of dispersing ki. Why don't you concentrate your ki and use it? Broly raised his voice. Daimon Goro wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up. Although these 3 punches were extremely heavy, under the protection of chi, they would not cause him to lose his fighting ability directly. Drink! Daimon Goro cheered up, shouted, opened his hands, and pushed towards Broly like a mountain. Through the previous fight, he had discovered that Broly was not as hopelessly strong as the video information given by Kingpin. But Broly's punch speed and nerve reflexes were too fast. If the fight is not dragged into a close fight, he will just be played around with applause. Broly turned sideways to avoid the push, his muscles and bones roared, and he hit Daimon Goro's chin with an elbow. Boom! 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 The chi of both sides collided violently, and they dug deep pits one after another on the ground, with gravel flying everywhere. Broly has long muscles and strong strength, giving him an advantage in strength. Daimon Goro has been training hard for more than 20 years, and he dares not slack off even for a day. His energy is stronger than Broly's. After Daimon Goro calmed down and fought steadily, the 2 sides traded dozens of moves, with no outcome in sight. The 2 men were almost turning into 2 phantoms in Filippoto's eyes as they flew up and down, making it impossible to see their movements clearly. He hid behind the wall with trembling hands, took out his cell phone, and dialed a number. Mr. Bullseye. Green Goblin has appeared, and Mr. Daimon Goro is fighting him. Please take action quickly. In the underground wine cellar, the 2 mercenaries who had been tortured were covered with bruises, and 4 of Filippoto's men were playing cards together. Bullseye, on the other hand, plays Russian roulette with Jackhammer. With trembling hands, Jackhammer put a revolver to his temple and pulled the trigger. Click! There were no bullets in the wheel. Jackhammer breathed a sigh of relief, pushed the pistol to the opposite side, picked up the whiskey in front of him, and drank it in one gulp. Bullseye, who was sitting in front of him, picked up the pistol, opened the barrel of the gun skillfully, and turned the wheel, which rotated at high speed like a top. After closing the gun with a click, he aimed the bullseye at his temple and pulled the trigger very casually. Click! There were no bullets in the chamber. Your luck is really weird. You haven't blown your head off after playing more than 20 times. This is so boring. Bullseye looked at the revolver in his hand, opened the chamber, and loaded 4 more bullets into it. It's more exciting this way. The probability of surviving is 1 in 6. I wonder if your luck will still be that good. He said, pushing the pistol in front of Jackhammer. With his gun stabbed in his back, Jackhammer picked up the pistol, feeling a conflict between heaven and man in his heart, wondering whether he should point the gun at his own head or aim at the bullseye in front of him. At this moment, the underground wine cellar they were in suddenly shook violently, and a large amount of dust fell from their heads. Is there an earthquake? Bullseye stood up and looked at the ceiling in confusion. Soon, Filippoto called. Green Goblin, it's really interesting. He actually came to the door. He said, raising a huge rectangular gun box at his feet and placing it on the table. Speaking of which, besides Green Goblin, you also have 2 companion, I wonder if they are ambushing me? But logically speaking, they should not know my existence yet. This is the fight I want. Broly said excitedly. He dug his feet on the ground, his muscles all over his body became strong, and he thrust an extremely strong and violent elbow towards Daimon Goro like a spear. His martial arts ability is extremely high. In just a few minutes of fighting, he has already tended to integrate the Wolf Fang Wind Fist and Satan fighting skills. Facing this battering ram-like elbow attack, Daimon Goro could not avoid it and could only resist it with his arms. The elbows collided, and the joints cracked. Broly's extremely aggressive energy was like a drill, piercing through Daimon Goro's energy, and the remaining energy went straight into the body, causing crazy destruction. Daimon Goro was in pain as if he had been shocked by electricity. He trembled all over and retreated continuously. His feet were like iron plows, rolling up the soil plowed on the ground before stopping his retreat. What kind of monster is this? He looked at his arms. After blocking the elbow, the muscle fibers in his arms were torn apart by the air. Even the hard arm bones had cracks. The pain was so painful that he could hardly exert any strength. Chapter 49. During the battle, Broly's energy not only did not weaken over time, but became stronger and stronger, and his strength and speed were also stronger than when the battle began. And Daimon Goro could clearly feel that his energy had passed its peak stage and was beginning to decline. If this continues, he will definitely lose. But Broly was too flexible, and his combat intuition was simply terrible, giving him no chance to use his throwing skills. The chance of victory is only a moment. Daimon Goro was already preparing for a last-ditch fight. Broly's fists were too terrifying. His body had been riddled with holes from the energy that was constantly pumping into his body. If he was hit with another punch, he might collapse immediately. Ah! Broly clenched his fists to suppress the rising energy in his body. The current strength is just right. If the anger continues to increase, there will be no fun in fighting at all. Still getting stronger. Daimon Goro's hair stood on end. He knew that he could not drag it out any longer. If he dragged it on any longer, he would lose all the courage to take action. No wonder he behaved so horribly in Mexico. What kind of terrifying monster is this? Is this really something humans can do? Why haven't Kingpin's promised helpers taken action yet? I'm going, Daimon Goro, you have to hold on a little longer. Broly finally suppressed his anger. He walked like a flying swallow, stepped on the wind and thunder, and punched with a lunge. In Daimon Goro's eyes, Broly seemed to have held a mountain in his fist and hit it. Even in his prime state, he will definitely die if he is hit by this punch. At the critical moment of life and death, Daimon Goro was highly concentrated and reached his limit. He suddenly sank down, and angrily planted his feet more than 50 centimeters into the ground to avoid the punch. Boom! The airflow from this punch was like a storm, blowing sand and rocks in the yard, and even the heavy granite tables and chairs were overturned. Chance! Daimon Goro finally found the opportunity he had been waiting for. He endured the sharp pain in his arm and grabbed Broly's shoulder. Extra large circumcision. He let out an angry roar and slammed Broly's body to the ground. Boom! Full of energy, this fall directly knocked Broly's body into the ground. The earth shook violently under this powerful blow. Hell's bliss! Daimon Goro grabbed Broly's shoulders with both hands, and the powerful energy imprisoned Broly, making him unable to move. Because the maximum strength was squeezed out, the veins on his face popped out, making him look particularly ferocious. Boom! He lifted Broly's body into the air and slammed it to the ground. Boom! A shockwave centered on the two of them and spread in all directions. The solid ground was shaken as soft as cotton, and even the mansion not far away shook violently. If Benjamin hadn't built this mansion as solidly as a fortress, it might have collapsed. As Daimon Goro's special move, Hell's Paradise will not end so easily. After trapping the opponent with his energy, Hellfall will deliver 3 powerful slams before throwing the opponent into the air. Daimon Goro picked up Broly again, violently swinging it up and down. Just the aftermath caused the gang leaders who had fled to fall to the ground, vomiting blood. He wanted to throw it down a third time, but suddenly found that he couldn't move his hands. Broly held Daimon Goro's wrist, and with just a twist, Daimon Goro involuntarily let go of his hand. How is this possible? What surprised him the most was not that Broly broke free from the confinement of his chi, but that he was in turn trapped by Broly's chi. The technique of imprisoning the enemy with energy is the core technique of his Ji-Ryu fighting technique, and it is impossible for anyone else to master it. Sand Angel had been training under his disciple for 3 years and still hadn't mastered this skill. How could Broly learn it after just being thrown twice? Daimon Goro even felt that he was hallucinating due to severe physical exertion. Broly stood up and slammed his knee, sending Daimon Goro flying out and falling to the ground. All your boxing skills are just unsatisfactory. Only this technique is interesting. As long as you grasp the timing well, you can restrain an opponent who is much stronger than yourself. It's interesting. It's so interesting. He was a little surprised that this technique might come in handy when fighting Frieza. Go on, you have one last chance. Daimon Goro was just trembling. His fighting spirit as a martial artist had been completely destroyed. His energy had been exhausted. Severe pain was felt all over his body. It was difficult to even move his fingers. Chapter 50. It is impossible to be the opponent of the demon in front of him. Even his friend, Kusanagi Kyo, the queen of the famous family, may not be able to defeat this demon. Kingpin, this BD, lied to himself and had no help at all. Broly raised an eyebrow. That's right. With your current anger, you can't continue fighting at all. After he finished speaking, a frightening wave immediately came from his palm, and the white energy was burning like a flame. Daimon Goro fell to the ground as if resigned to his fate, waiting for death to come. A light bullet flew out of Broly's palm and entered Daimon Goro's body. There was no unexpected severe pain, it felt like my body was soaked in hot water, and new strength was constantly gushing out. I gave you my energy. Now you can stand up and fight again. Broly crossed his arms and said, come out and show me something new. Daimon Goro stood up with difficulty, his face blank. Give me some fighting spirit. Broly scratched his head. Matt said in the headset that they could hold off Bullseye for 3 minutes. It was rare to encounter such a powerful opponent, and he didn't want the battle to end hastily. Da-da-da. There was a burst of automatic carbine gunfire, and the empty shells clinked on the ground. After Matt emptied the bullets in the magazine, he immediately stepped back and changed the magazine. Alejandro stepped forward, raised the rifle in his hand and pulled the trigger. After Alejandro empties the magazine, Wade steps up. The three of them cooperated with each other, and the firepower was almost non-stop. The bullet hit the wall, nearly tearing a big hole in it and sending rubble flying. You are so enthusiastic. Bullseye stood at the corner of the corridor, holding a billiard ball in his hand, and suddenly threw it hard. The billiard ball bounced off the wall twice and hit Wade's hand hard, breaking his phalanges. FK, how did he do that? Wade covered his hands and screamed in pain, he cursed loudly, and suddenly a pencil flew over and stuck into his calf. Back off! Back off! Mata held the gun with one hand and continued to shoot across the corridor, dragging Wade back with the other hand. This is the limit of how long we can hold him off. Let's retreat. He was very calm, Wade was injured, and he and Alejandro Logan couldn't stop Bullseye. If they continued to delay, they would only lose their lives in vain. And more importantly, Broly said in the communication that he had eliminated Daimon Goro. If you want to escape, do you have my permission? Bullseye fiddled with a pen in his hand. Just as he was about to throw it out, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. What happened again? He said very impatiently. Mr. Bullseye, where are you? Daimon Goro is about to lose his strength. Filippoto's somewhat panicked voice sounded from the other end of the phone. What a waste! Bullseye said, throwing away the pen in his hand. There was a muffled groan from the other end of the corridor. Kingpin's order could not be disobeyed, he could only help Daimon Goro get rid of the Green Goblin first. Picking up the gun case placed aside, he wandered to a room in the mansion, opened the gun case, and took out the huge thing inside. Installed inside the gun box is a 20mm anti-tank rifle produced by the Stark Group. A cable is pulled out from the gun box and connected to the rifle. This uses the battery inside the gun case to power the rifle's electromagnetic rail. This rifle that pursues ultimate destructive power is the work of Tony Stark when he was in his 30s. Specially designed for airborne troops, allowing airborne troops who cannot carry heavy vehicles to have anti-tank capabilities. The gun body weighs 25 kilograms and uses special gold titanium alloy armor-piercing bullets. Under the acceleration of the electromagnetic guide rail, the exit speed reaches an astonishing 2,876 seconds, reaching 8 times the speed of sound. It can penetrate most main battle tanks in service of potential enemy countries from the front. However, due to the extremely high cost and the extremely high requirements for operators, it failed in the bidding, and only 3 test products were produced in total. Even Jin Bin, who has great hands and eyes, spent a lot of connections and money to obtain this powerful monster gun. Mounting the rifle on the tripod, Bullseye took a deep breath and aimed at the yard below. He didn't believe Green Goblin could withstand this level of attack. However, Broly's figure did not appear in the yard. He only saw Daimon Goro lying on the ground not knowing whether he was alive or dead, and Filippo standing aside with a phone in his hand. What the hell, where is the Green Goblin? While he was wondering, Filippo suddenly burst out a cloud of smoke and transformed into Broly. The call just now was not from Filippo, but from Broly.
If you're enjoying the story so far and want to hear the next parts, don't forget to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And if you'd like me to continue the series, drop a comment below letting me know. Your feedback and support keep these audiobooks going strong. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.